The sound cut through the Brentwood afternoon like breaking glass. "Where is it?" Peter Lawford stood frozen in the doorway, his hand still gripping the frame, watching something he never imagined he would see. Bobby Kennedy, Attorney General of the United States, his brother-in-law, one of the most powerful men in the world, had Marilyn Monroe by both wrists. Her arms were pinned, her eyes were wild. And then Kennedy shoved her backward with such force that she flew onto the bed, her body bouncing once against the mattress before settling in a twisted heap. Marilyn screamed, not a movie scream, polished and performative, but something raw and animal. "Get out! Get out of my house!" Kennedy didn't move. He stood over her, breathing hard, his hands still balled into fists at his sides, his face flushed crimson. For a moment, Lawford thought Bobby might hit her. Actually hit her. Instead, Kennedy leaned down, grabbed her wrists again before she could scramble away, and yanked her upright with such violence that her head snapped back. "Where is the diary?" Kennedy's voice was hoarse, desperate. "Where is it?" Marilyn tried to pull free, but Bobby's grip was ironclad. She twisted, gasping, her platinum hair falling across her face, her breath coming in ragged sobs. "Let go of me! Bobby, you're hurting me!" Lawford finally moved. He crossed the bedroom in 3 strides and grabbed Kennedy from behind, wrapping his arms around Bobby's chest and hauling him backward. Kennedy released Marilyn and spun around, eyes blazing, and for one terrible second, Lawford thought his brother-in-law was going to swing at him. But Bobby caught himself, stepped back, ran both hands through his hair, and turned away without a word. It was August 4th, 1962. 2:15 in the afternoon. In less than 12 hours, Marilyn Monroe would be dead. Nearly 20 years later, sitting on a park bench off Sunset Boulevard with a cop he'd never met before, Peter Lawford would finally tell someone what really happened that day. He would break down crying. He would describe every terrible detail. And when the cop asked him if he thought the Kennedy brothers wanted Marilyn dead, Lawford would nod and whisper one word: yes. The day had started wrong from the moment Lawford picked up the phone that morning. Bobby's voice on the other end was tight, clipped, barely controlled. "I'm flying down. Pick me up at LAX at noon. Don't be late." Lawford wanted to ask why, wanted to know what the hell was going on, but Bobby had already hung up. Lawford stood there in his Malibu beach house holding the dead receiver, his wife Patricia, Bobby's sister, watching him from the kitchen doorway. "What did he want?" she asked. "He's coming to L.A., Lawford said. "Something about Marilyn." Patricia's face darkened. She knew about Marilyn and Bobby. Everyone in the family knew. Jack Kennedy had been sleeping with Marilyn on and off for years, treating her like room service. And when he got bored, Bobby had stepped in. Except Bobby had made the catastrophic mistake of actually falling for her. And now Marilyn was talking, threatening, unraveling. "This is going to end badly," Patricia said. She was right. Lawford arrived at LAX at 11:45. He sat in his Lincoln Continental near the private terminal, engine idling, watching planes land and take off. At 12:10, Bobby emerged from the building wearing sunglasses and a hat pulled low. He wasn't alone. Dr. Ralph Greenson, Marilyn's psychiatrist, walked beside him carrying a medical bag. Lawford's stomach dropped. Greenson's presence meant this was serious. This wasn't just Bobby flying down to have a conversation. This was an intervention, or worse. Bobby got in the front passenger seat without saying hello. Greenson climbed in back. Neither man spoke. Lawford pulled out of the airport and headed toward Brentwood, his hands tight on the wheel, his mind racing. They were 2 miles from Marilyn's house when the police lights flashed behind them. Lawford's heart stopped. He pulled over, watching in the rearview mirror as an LAPD officer approached. This was it. This was where everything fell apart. The cop was going to recognize Bobby Kennedy sitting in the front seat, and tomorrow's headlines would scream, "Attorney General caught visiting Marilyn Monroe," and it would all be over. The officer, his badge said Franklin, leaned down to Lawford's window. "License and registration." Lawford handed them over, his hands shaking. Franklin looked at the documents, looked at Lawford, then looked at Bobby. "Who's your friend?" Bobby had his sunglasses on, his hat pulled low. He didn't move, didn't speak. "Just a friend," Lawford said. visiting from San Francisco. Franklin studied Bobby for a long moment. Then he wrote something in his notebook, handed back Lawford's license, and said, "You ran a stop sign back there. I'm giving you a warning. Drive carefully." He walked back to his patrol car. Lawford sat there, not breathing, waiting for Franklin to come back and demand Bobby's identification. But Franklin just got in his car and drove away. Bobby exhaled. "Let's go." They arrived at Marilyn's house at 2 o'clock. The address was 12305 5th Helena Drive, a small Spanish-style home at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. Marilyn had bought it a year ago, the first home she'd ever owned by herself. She called it her sanctuary, her safe place. It wouldn't be safe much longer. Eunice Murray answered the door. She was Marilyn's housekeeper, a gray-haired woman in her 50s who also functioned as Marilyn's keeper, her warden, her spy. Murray had been hired by Dr. Greenson, not by Marilyn, and her real job was to watch Marilyn 24 hours a day and report everything back to Greenson. Every phone call, every visitor, every mood swing. Murray looked surprised to see the three men standing on the doorstep, but not shocked. Greenson must have called ahead. Bobby reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded stack of cash. He handed it to Murray without a word. "Leave for a few hours." Murray took the money. She didn't ask questions. She grabbed her purse, walked to her car, and drove away. That left 3 people in the house: Bobby Kennedy, Peter Lawford, and Marilyn Monroe. She was in the living room when they walked in. The room was white everywhere: white walls, white furniture, white carpet, except for the mirrors that covered one entire wall from floor to ceiling. Marilyn sat on the white sofa, wearing white capri pants and a loose white blouse. No shoes, no makeup. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked small, fragile, and when she saw Bobby Kennedy walk through the door, her face went through a series of expressions so fast Lawford could barely track them. Hope, fear, anger, desperation. "You came," she said. Her voice was quiet, almost childlike. Bobby didn't smile. He didn't move to embrace her. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, and said, "We need to talk." "About what?" Marilyn asked, though she clearly already knew. "About Monday," Bobby said. "About this press conference you're planning." Marilyn's expression hardened. "Who told you about that?" "It doesn't matter," Bobby said. "What matters is you can't do it." "Can't?" Marilyn's voice rose. "You mean you don't want me to?" "Marilyn, please, don't!" She stood up, her hands balling into fists. "Don't you dare come into my house and tell me what I can and can't do." Lawford moved toward the door, instinctively wanting to leave, to not be part of whatever was about to happen. But Bobby shot him a look that said stay, and Lawford stayed. Bobby tried again, his voice calmer now, measured. "What do you want? Tell me what you want and we'll work something out." And that's when Marilyn exploded. "What do I want?" she screamed. "What do I want? I don't want to be treated like a fucking whore and thrown away like garbage. That's what I want." She was crying now, tears streaming down her face, her whole body shaking. "You used me, both of you, you and Jack. You made me think I mattered, that I was more than just some stupid blonde actress, and then you just... She couldn't finish. She lunged at Bobby, trying to slap him, but he caught her wrists mid-swing, and that's when something inside Bobby Kennedy broke. He yanked her arms down hard. She stumbled. He shoved her backward. She lost her balance and fell, her body hitting the edge of the sofa before sliding to the floor. She landed on her hands and knees, gasping, and Bobby was standing over her, his face twisted with rage. "You want to know what you want?" he shouted. "You want attention. You want to feel special. Well, guess what, Marilyn? You're not special. You're a goddamn liability." Marilyn looked up at him, her eyes wide with shock and pain, and then she smiled. It was the coldest, bitterest smile Lawford had ever seen. "I have your secrets," she said softly. "I have all of them. And on Monday, the whole world is going to know what kind of men the Kennedys really are." Bobby's face went white, then red, then white again. His hands started shaking, and Lawford saw it. The exact moment Bobby Kennedy made a decision. "Where is it?" Bobby said. "Where's what?" Marilyn asked, though she clearly knew. "The diary. Where's the goddamn diary?" Marilyn laughed. It was a horrible sound, empty and broken. "You think I'm going to tell you?" Bobby didn't wait for an answer. He walked past her, down the hallway toward the bedrooms. Marilyn scrambled to her feet and ran after him, screaming at him to stop, to get out, but Bobby ignored her. He went straight to her bedroom, the small, square room with the enormous bed and the mirrored walls, and started tearing it apart. He threw open the closet door, yanked clothes off hangers, pulled shoeboxes down from the shelf and dumped them on the floor. Marilyn grabbed his arm, trying to stop him. "Stop it! Bobby, you can't!" He spun around and grabbed both her wrists, hard, so hard that she cried out in pain. "Where is it?" he demanded, his face inches from hers. "I don't have it here," Marilyn sobbed. "It's safe. It's somewhere you'll never find it." Bobby's grip tightened. Marilyn tried to jerk away, but he was too strong. He dragged her toward the bed, and she was fighting him now, really fighting, her free hand clawing at his face, her legs kicking. Bobby caught her other wrist, pinned both arms, and then he threw her. She flew backward, her body hitting the bed with enough force to make the frame creak. She bounced once, trying to scramble away, but Bobby grabbed her wrists again and yanked her upright, his face purple with rage. "Where is it?" That's when Lawford grabbed him. He wrapped both arms around Bobby's chest and pulled him back with all his strength. Bobby released Marilyn, and she collapsed onto the bed, sobbing hysterically. Lawford held Bobby for a moment longer, feeling the tension in his body like a coiled spring, and then slowly let him go. Bobby stood there breathing hard, staring at Marilyn. Then he turned and walked out of the bedroom without saying a word. Lawford sat down on the edge of the bed. Marilyn was curled into a ball, shaking, crying so hard she could barely breathe. He put his hand on her shoulder. "It's okay," he said, though he knew it wasn't. "It's okay. He's gone." But Bobby wasn't gone. Lawford heard a sound in the kitchen, the faucet running, the clink of glass against the sink. He left Marilyn on the bed and walked down the hallway. Bobby was standing at the sink with his back to the door. He had a glass of water in one hand, and in the other hand, he had a spoon. He was stirring something into the water. "Bobby," Lawford said carefully, "what are you doing?" Kennedy didn't turn around. He kept stirring, the spoon making soft, clinking sounds against the glass. "Nothing. That doesn't look like nothing." Bobby set the spoon down on the counter. The water in the glass was clear. Whatever he'd mixed into it had dissolved completely. "What was that?" Lawford asked. "I said it's nothing," Bobby snapped. He picked up the glass and pushed past Lawford, heading back toward the bedroom. Lawford followed, his mind racing. What the hell had Bobby put in that water? Pills? Powder? Something Greenson had given him? And why? They found Marilyn still sitting on the edge of the bed, her face buried in her hands, crying quietly now. Bobby walked over and held out the glass. "Drink this," he said. His voice was calm again, almost gentle. "You'll feel better." Marilyn looked up. She looked at the glass. Then she looked at Lawford. "What is it?" she asked. "Just water," Bobby said, "with something to help you relax." "Doctor's orders." Marilyn hesitated. Her eyes moved from Bobby to Lawford and back again. Lawford wanted to say something, wanted to tell her to throw the glass across the room and call the police, but he couldn't. He didn't know what was in it. Maybe it really was just something to calm her down. Maybe Greenson had given Bobby some medication for her. Maybe... "It's okay," Lawford heard himself say. "It's okay, Marilyn. Just drink it." He would hate himself for those words for the rest of his life. Marilyn took the glass. She stared at it for a long moment. Then she drank. Not all of it, just a few sips. She made a face. "It tastes weird." "Finish it," Bobby said. "All of it. It won't work unless you finish it." Marilyn drank the rest. Bobby took the empty glass from her hand and set it on the nightstand. Then he turned to Lawford. "Help me look." They searched the house for the next 20 minutes. Every drawer, every closet, every shelf. Bobby was systematic, methodical, almost frantic. He went through her desk in the living room, her medicine cabinet in the bathroom, the storage boxes in the guest room. Lawford helped, but his eyes kept drifting back to the bedroom where Marilyn was sitting on the bed, motionless. She hadn't moved since drinking the water. After a while, Bobby went back to check on her. Lawford followed. Marilyn was leaning against the headboard now, her eyes half closed, her head tilted at an odd angle. Bobby shook her shoulder. "Marilyn," he said. "Marilyn, where's the diary?" She didn't answer. Her eyes rolled back slightly. "Marilyn!" Bobby shook her harder. Still nothing. Lawford's stomach clenched. "Bobby, what did you give her?" "Just something to calm her down," Bobby said, but there was panic in his voice now. He grabbed Marilyn's face, turned it toward him. "Marilyn, wake up!" Her head lolled to the side like a rag doll. Lawford pushed past Bobby and grabbed Marilyn's wrist, pressing his fingers against her pulse. It was there, but faint, weak. Her breathing was shallow, irregular. Her skin felt cold. "We need to call an ambulance," Lawford said. "No." Bobby's voice was sharp, final. "No ambulance, no police. No one can know I was here. Bobby, she's not breathing right." "I said no." There was a knock at the front door. Both men froze. The knock came again, louder, more insistent. Lawford's first thought was that a neighbor had heard the shouting and called the police. This was it. Everything was going to come out. Bobby Kennedy caught at the scene of Marilyn Monroe's overdose. Career over. Presidency destroyed. Everything gone. Bobby grabbed his arm, his grip painful. "Don't answer it." The knock came a third time. Whoever was out there wasn't going away. Lawford walked to the front door, Bobby right behind him. He opened it slowly. Two men stood on the doorstep. Both wore dark suits. Both had the look of cops, though neither wore a uniform. The taller one was broad-shouldered with iron-gray hair. The shorter one was younger, compact, with dead eyes. "We're here to help," the tall one said. Lawford recognized him. He'd seen him before, standing in the background at parties, at political events, always near Bobby or Jack, but never quite part of the crowd. LAPD Intelligence Division. Captain James Hamilton, one of Chief Parker's men. Bobby stepped forward. "How did you know?" "We've been monitoring the situation," Hamilton said. He looked past Bobby and Lawford into the house. "Where is she?" "Bedroom," Bobby said. His voice was barely a whisper. She's not responding." Hamilton nodded to his partner. The two men walked inside without being invited. Hamilton was carrying a medical bag. Bobby grabbed Lawford's arm and pulled him toward the door. "We're leaving," Bobby said. "What?" Lawford couldn't believe what he was hearing. "We can't just leave her." "They'll handle it," Bobby said. "We were never here. Do you understand me, Peter? We were never here." Lawford looked back into the house. Through the doorway, he could see the two men walking down the hallway toward Marilyn's bedroom. Hamilton was opening the medical bag. Bobby yanked his arm. "Peter, now!" They walked to the car. Bobby got in the passenger seat. Lawford got behind the wheel. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely fit the key in the ignition. He started the engine, backed out of the driveway, drove down 5th Helena Drive toward San Vicente Boulevard. They didn't speak. Lawford kept looking at Bobby, waiting for him to say something, to explain what the hell had just happened, but Bobby just stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched, his hands folded in his lap. Finally, Lawford couldn't take it anymore. "Bobby," he said. "What did you give her?" Kennedy didn't answer. "Bobby!" Lawford's voice was louder now, almost shouting. "What was in that glass?" "I don't know," Bobby said quietly. "What do you mean you don't know?" "Greenson gave it to me. He said it would calm her down. That's all. But what if it—" "She'll be fine," Bobby interrupted. His voice was firm now, convincing. "Those men will take care of her. She'll sleep it off, and when she wakes up she'll realize that going public was a mistake." Lawford wanted to believe that. God, he wanted to believe it. But he couldn't shake the image of Marilyn sitting on that bed, her eyes glassy, her breathing shallow, her body already shutting down. They drove to the airport in silence. When they arrived, Bobby got out of the car without saying goodbye. He walked into the terminal, disappeared into a private lounge, and boarded a plane back to San Francisco. By the time Marilyn Monroe was officially pronounced dead 12 hours later, Bobby Kennedy would have an alibi that couldn't be broken. He'd been in San Francisco all day, at his sister's beach house in Malibu all evening. He'd never been to Brentwood, never seen Marilyn, never touched that glass of water. Peter Lawford drove home to Malibu. He walked into his house, went straight to the bar, and poured himself a drink. Then another. Then another. His wife asked what was wrong, but he couldn't answer. He sat on the couch drinking scotch until the room started spinning, and then he drank more. At 4 in the morning, the phone rang. Lawford answered it, his hand shaking so badly he almost dropped the receiver. "Peter?" It was a man's voice. He didn't recognize it. "This is Milton Rudin, Marilyn's attorney. I'm calling to let you know." Marilyn passed away tonight. I'm sorry. Lawford dropped the phone. He heard his wife screaming. He heard himself screaming. But all he could see was Marilyn sitting on that bed, the empty glass on the nightstand, Bobby walking out the door without looking back. He had known. Deep down, he had known she wasn't going to wake up. For nearly 20 years, Peter Lawford carried that secret. He told no one. Not his wife, not his friends, not the police who investigated Marilyn's death and quickly ruled it a suicide. He drank to forget. He took pills to sleep. His career collapsed. His marriage ended. He spiraled into alcoholism and drug addiction, doing anything to numb the memory of what he'd seen that day. And then, in the spring of 1982, he met Detective Mike Rothmiller. It was a chance encounter at the Playboy Mansion. Rothmiller was there on his day off, giving his wife and friends a tour of the grounds. He wandered into a small room and found Peter Lawford sitting alone on a sofa, half drunk, staring at a tiny television. Lawford was barely recognizable. His hair was matted, his face was pale and gaunt, his eyes were hollow. But Rothmiller knew who he was. More importantly, Rothmiller knew what he was. As a detective in the LAPD's Organized Crime Intelligence Division, Rothmiller had access to thousands of secret files on Hollywood celebrities, politicians, and mobsters. He had read the classified reports on Marilyn Monroe's death. He had seen the wiretap transcripts. He had reviewed the evidence that proved beyond any doubt that Marilyn Monroe had not committed suicide. And he knew that Peter Lawford had been there the day she died. Rothmiller slipped his business card into Lawford's shirt pocket and left. He didn't expect anything to come of it. But a week later, his office phone rang. "This is Peter Lawford," the voice said. "You gave me your card. Can we talk?" They met the next day at a park off Sunset Boulevard, not far from the Playboy Mansion. Lawford was sober this time, but he looked terrified. He kept asking if Rothmiller was with the CIA. He kept looking over his shoulder. He kept asking if their conversation was being recorded. Rothmiller assured him it wasn't. "I just want to know what happened," he said. "That's all." Lawford nodded, and then he started talking. For the next 2 hours, Peter Lawford described everything. The phone call from Bobby that morning, the drive to Marilyn's house, the argument, the violence, the glass of water, the 2 men arriving at the door, leaving Marilyn on that bed, barely conscious, knowing she was dying. He cried through most of it. Several times he had to stop, overcome by emotion, and Rothmiller would put his hand on Lawford's shoulder and wait until he could continue. When it was over, when every terrible detail had been spoken aloud for the first time in 20 years, Rothmiller asked the question that mattered most. "Do you think John and Bobby wanted her dead?" Lawford stared straight ahead for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Yes." "When you left Marilyn that day," Rothmiller asked, "did you believe she was dead?" Lawford's voice was barely a whisper. "Yes." They sat in silence. Then Lawford turned to Rothmiller, tears streaming down his face. "I left her," he said. "I knew she was dying and I left her there. I've lived with that every day for 20 years, every single day." Rothmiller didn't know what to say. What could he say? That it wasn't Lawford's fault? That Bobby Kennedy had manipulated him? That the LAPD had covered it up? All of that was true. But it didn't change what Lawford had done. "Thank you for telling me," Rothmiller finally said. Lawford wiped his eyes. "What are you going to do with this?" "I don't know," Rothmiller admitted. "But at least now someone knows the truth." Peter Lawford died on Christmas Eve, 1984, at the age of 61. The official cause of death was cardiac arrest, but those who knew him said he had really died of guilt. His body was cremated, his ashes were scattered at sea, and the confession he gave to Detective Mike Rothmiller remained buried in the LAPD's secret files for decades. Until now. What would you have done? Comment below and subscribe for more stories that will change everything you thought you knew. The truth about what happened to Marilyn Monroe on August 4, 1962, has been buried under layers of lies, cover-ups, and official reports that were written to protect the most powerful men in America. The LAPD ruled it a probable suicide. The coroner found no evidence of foul play. The case was closed within days. And for decades, anyone who questioned the official story was dismissed as a conspiracy theorist a crackpot, someone who couldn't accept that America's most famous actress had simply taken too many pills and gone to sleep forever. But Peter Lawford knew the truth. He carried it with him through the wreckage of his career, through his divorce, through his descent into alcoholism and addiction. He carried it through every bottle of scotch, every handful of pills, every morning he woke up and wished he hadn't. And in the spring of 1982, sitting on a park bench with a detective who promised to listen without judgment, he finally let it go. The LAPD never investigated Lawford's confession. The files were buried, the evidence was destroyed, and the men responsible for Marilyn Monroe's death, Bobby Kennedy, Dr. Ralph Greenson, Captain James Hamilton, and others whose names appear in those classified documents, were never held accountable. Bobby Kennedy was assassinated in 1968, shot in the kitchen of the Ambassador Hotel by a man who claimed to be acting alone. Some say it was karma, others say it was coincidence. But those who knew what Bobby had done to Marilyn Monroe saw it as something else entirely. Justice delayed, perhaps, but justice nonetheless. Dr. Ralph Greenson died in 1979, taking his secrets to the grave. Eunice Murray lived until 1994, changing her story about that night so many times that even she seemed to forget what was true and what was lie. And Captain James Hamilton, the LAPD intelligence officer who arrived at Marilyn's house with a medical bag and helped stage the scene to look like suicide, retired with full honors and died quietly in his sleep, his role in her death never publicly acknowledged. Peter Lawford died on Christmas Eve, 1984. He was 61 years old, broke, sick, and alone. His final years were spent in and out of rehab, struggling with demons that no amount of therapy or medication could silence. Those who knew him said he talked about Marilyn constantly near the end, apologizing to her in his sleep, begging her forgiveness for something no one around him understood. At his funeral, there were no Kennedy family members in attendance, no Hollywood stars, no tribute from the president or the attorney general or anyone else whose careers Lawford had helped build. Just a handful of friends and a priest who didn't know him well enough to eulogize him properly. His ashes were scattered at sea, and with them went the last living witness to what really happened in that Brentwood bedroom on August 4th, 1962. But the evidence remained in those secret LAPD files that Detective Mike Rothmiller discovered in 1978. In the wiretap transcripts that captured Marilyn's final conversations, in the traffic stop report that placed Bobby Kennedy 2 miles from Marilyn's house at 12:10 in the afternoon, in the confession that Peter Lawford gave, sobbing, on a park bench 20 years too late to save anyone. Marilyn Monroe didn't kill herself. She was murdered. And the men who killed her were the same men who were supposed to protect her, to love her, to treat her like she mattered. They failed her. And then they erased her. And for 60 years, they got away with it. Until now. Subscribe for more stories they don't want you to know. And comment below, do you think justice will ever come for Marilyn Monroe?